Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Currency Podcast, or just Currency Podcast, episode number 102. Still moving on in life as a podcaster and as a person is what I'm doing. I'm continuing my career mode today on this podcast and Twitch stream. I'm going to try to get through 9 holes today for my career mode, and so you can obviously tune into the video if you want to, or just listen to the podcast. I try to make it so that the experience is valid for both if you just listen to audio or for the video. That's something I try to accomplish. But I'm going to during the course of this hour try to get through 9 holes in my career mode. I'm still on the second tournament of the Korn Ferry Tour. Just recapping you in case you haven't tuned in recently. I'm in the second tournament of my career mode on the Korn Ferry Tour, and basically if I do well enough on the Korn Ferry Tour, they'll in PGA Tour 2K21 video game, I'll graduate to the PGA Tour if I do well enough on the Korn Ferry Tour, and that's not a given. I'm pretty sure my settings are normal difficulty. Gotta turn my TV down. That should be good, a 2 volume. 2 volume, that's always decent. You can't go wrong with 2 when your volume is 2 on your TV. That's the way I've always felt that it is. Personally, myself. Today is Saturday, I'll be watching some college football today. I don't remember if... Oh, hold the skip, definitely. What are you talking about, video game? I don't remember if I said anything about Scott Frost before he got fired, because I remember that I might have said something, but I don't remember if that was like during a minute that I eventually nixed that didn't make it to the official canon of this podcast. Like, I remember saying that I thought that they shouldn't fire Scott Frost after they lost to Northwestern. And I'm just saying, don't hold me to that if I did say that on record. And only if I said it on record did I mean it. If it wasn't recorded, I always thought that they should fire him. But it's just kind of interesting that their program is in shambles and they're in denial about Scott Frost the entire time. Who would have known that Frost would be bad for corn, right? In case you're a college football fan, that's a little joke for you about Nebraska football. The Nebraska tradition, you can't knock it, except that their tradition might have only been good for a single decade where they won championships in the 90s. The 90s are over, but yet we still, post the 90s, we still live in a world where we're expecting Nebraska football to be successful. I don't know that we really in reality need to have those expectations. I'm starting off cold here. So, I'll try to get through 9 holes. I don't know that, because I have not practiced playing this game. I don't know that I'll be able to make it to the PGA Tour. I might fail at the Korn Ferry Tour and have to do it over again. This and other things on the line as I broadcast to you while making a Twitch stream. But generally that's gonna run. It's really gonna run. That's really gonna run. Wow. But I feel as though the world is processing dreams a lot. I feel like the word dream comes up in entertainment. There's TV shows, there's a number of bullshit shows on Netflix that are about dreams of some kind, but I feel as though in the recent couple of years, especially since the pandemic, one thing that's come under attack is the idea of the American dream. I'm just spitballing here, but as if I've never done that before. That's not what normally goes on here. Normally, I spend, before each podcast episode, I lay out the facts that I'm about to say for 10 hours. Like, I do tons of studying and tons of research to make sure that I don't put my foot in my mouth. Um, but in reality, this podcast works something like the opposite of that. It's like it aims for my foot to be in my mouth. Besides that, I just say incorrect things often, but it's usually on purpose. Like, I have this problem when I get to talking to people in real life where I just start never saying anything that makes any sense, just because that's always been fun for me to do it like that. Like, especially if it's a stranger. Like, I have a hard time taking it seriously. Just the conversation environment that I'm expected to say straightforward things, but only if I'm having a good time, I guess, because there's a lot of times where I do just say straightforward things like a basic bitch do. Stop rolling. This one's slick green, let me tell you. I'm not a big fan. Oh wow, really? This is for double bogey? Wow. That's strange. I don't really see how that figures, but I mean, whatever. Almost missed that one, but not really. Wow, a nice double bogey to start off the round. Love when that happens. What was I saying that I was spitballing about? Dreams that I think we're processing the American dream, but just maybe we realize the idea of the American dream is kind of stupid. But when you consider like systemic poverty, you already understand that the idea of the American dream is dumb, because the idea is like, the great thing about America is that it doesn't matter who you are, you can overcome classism in an instant because of the opportunities here. Because it's the freest country on earth, the earth has overcome classism if you're within the borders of the USA. Like, that's the idea behind the American dream a little bit. Like, it ignores that classism persists no matter what. It's like, if you really believed wholeheartedly in the American dream, that would be like saying that Nebraska is about to go. That would be like if Nebraska went 11-1 this year, or 12-0 this year in college football. Like, that's as much the chance. And before the season, there were people saying that things like that might happen. Like, Nebraska, even though they've proven nothing in the last few years, they might all of a sudden be 11-1 and be in the upper echelon of college football. Like, people ignore the systemic factor of, like, that Nebraska as an organization has been in poverty, not complete poverty, like they do better than some teams, but they've been in poverty a little bit as an organization for like a decade, and so they're not going to overcome that all of a sudden. Like betting on the Cleveland Browns or something, even just because the Browns are good now. If you consider historically what the Browns do, like, just think about it. You shouldn't bet on the Browns, even though it is different now. Like, things have turned, but it's just rare when something turns. It's rare for the Browns to actually be good like they are in the NFL now. That's completely foreign to the way that it's been the last like 30 years. Even though, I do have problems with my headset turning itself off while I'm talking into it. I might just have to take the recording from my microphone every single time, because I've found out that recording is better. I wanted to mention that if you are going to watch my Twitch stream instead of the YouTube video after the fact, after it's recorded, you can do that, but I'd appreciate if you would follow me on Twitch, like give me a follower, just because the Twitch stream episode eventually disappears from Twitch, and then whatever views that are on there are gone now. And so then, for appearance sake, it's better if you watch the YouTube video. But like, you can watch the Twitch stream. I give you the link to that too. It's just that I would appreciate if you also followed me, just because the views as counted do get lost if you watch the Twitch stream just by itself. And so if you're not following me and watching the Twitch stream instead of the YouTube video, because the YouTube video, that the numbers will never go away because the video is always there. If you're doing that, then stop trying to sabotage me, because I'm trying to run this operation, and there's already difficulty in it enough on its own, and if I have fans of mine that are just sabotaging me, then I win. I probably like it. I probably think it's kinky. Oh yeah, do watch it. I want to see how few views I can get. It's kind of like a project. This project that I do, this podcast, is like how many views, how much content can I make without going big? Like, can I make 1,000 episodes without anybody in the world hearing about me? That's the question that I'm asking. That's what we're trying to figure out over here. Can I make 3,000 episodes like it's the most prolific podcast in the world, but nobody's heard of it? And I'm being facetious, but recently I started to monetize my podcast and take it more seriously, rather than clown on my own efforts to be successful. I took the step of monetizing my podcast and stay on the fucking green. What the fuck? All right, well, that's the slopiest corner of a green that anybody's ever made, so it's too bad that my ball barely rolled over to it so that I could lose 10 more yards of position. But I mean, I don't know. I guess that's cool, the way that went down, or whatever, or whatever you'd call it. I don't know. Is that what happened? Who's to say that is even what happened? I'm in denial, folks. That's me being in denial. In denial. Yeah, I like it. I like when you watch the stream, watch the video that I don't prefer. Listen to my preferences. My preferences are the gospel. Okay, well, it looks like I have to, looks like I have to hit it a little less here. Get out of there. Stop rolling. That's not bad. That's not a bad shot. The green is so fast. What I'm mentioning is, I feel like the word dream is coming up, or we're discussing that it's strange the way that dreams work. I personally think that you can look at the world like it is one giant dream. But I feel like your waking world is a dream and your sleeping world is a dream. And that the waking world dream isn't as much, I mean, it's not as dreamlike as the dreams you have when you're dreaming, when you're sleeping. The actual world, it's kind of just more frozen in time. It's more of a still frame. It doesn't happen as fast. It's just that the dream scenarios that you go through while you're dreaming, you can go through so many of them just in one night. You can visit a lot of different worlds, or a lot of different scenarios, and they all, like, one right after the other. Like, it can change so much, the dreams that you have during the course of a night. But then, like, you compare that to your waking life, and your waking life, it just doesn't transpire at a very fast rate. But I would say that you can do something like make your waking life more dreamlike, or more like the way things work when you're sleeping, if you have a chaotic waking life. Or in other words, if you were like a stand-up comedian who was on tour, so that you're in a different city every night, like a different venue every night with different crowds of people. Like, if you put yourself in a position where you are gonna be surrounded by all these different influences, like different people, or be influenced by different environments, different kinds of people for different venues or whatever. If you're just like traveling everywhere, different cities, then your life would look more chaotic. And I say this based on experience. Like, if I mean, not necessarily experience doing stand up, because I wish I did it more, honestly, that I might be able to speak to this that I'm talking about. But it's like, if I do stand up a couple times in a week, or have a week that's busier, and I'm saying, like, you don't need to do stand up to recognize this principle I'm about to say. Like, if you have a week where you do something every night of the week, you go out, versus a week where you stay in the entire week, that's the difference between the waking world and the dreaming world that you see when you're sleeping. Is like, the dreaming world is more chaotic, like different scenarios all the time. Like, if I live a week where I do something every night of the week, that's it's just chaotic. It feels like it's more like I lived a year of my life rather than a week. Like, it feels like so much happens if you go out all the time. But if you just stay in all the time, no events happen, and it feels something like no time has passed. Like, if you have more events in the same amount of time, like in a week, then it's like time is going by faster, as if like a whole year went by for a week that you had that was really busy. But I'm just talking about the chaos that comes with, if you allow yourself to just go anywhere, or like do what you want. Like, tonight, tonight I'm gonna go out and go here. Then what happens is you introduce yourself to different scenarios all the time. I mean, if you don't harken back to the stability of like your home, if you don't stay in, if you instead go out and like live your life that way, where you're just meeting new people all the time, if you live a gypsy lifestyle or something, is what I'm talking about, your life becomes more like a night of dreams, where people are just filtering in and out of your life very quickly, and it's more difficult to pin down why they're there. Like, if you don't have stability, the way that people and places move in and out of your life will flow through you the way that they do in dreams. How about that? Huh? How about those thoughts on this Saturday morn? I really need this birdie. I need it. I need this birdie. I didn't hit it hard enough. God, I'm an idiot. Forgive me, God, for not making this birdie. PGA Tour 2K21. If you can, that's unforgivable. I'm going to get to the white throne judgment. God's going to be like, yeah, remember when you let off with that double bogey in the second tournament in the career mode, and when you're trying to beat the Korn Ferry Tour, and then you followed that up with a par when you could have had a birdie because your potential eagle putt rolled off the green, and the slopiest green that's ever been created. God's gonna relive that with me someday in the future. But it's just kind of like, you can increase the memory of yourself in the world. You do that if more events happen for you. You go out more. I know I talk about this a lot. Yeah, my headset keeps turning off, and that's a real shame. Let me make sure I get the right club here. We're just gonna go with this one. We're gonna hit it normal. I hope it lands on the green. I hope it gets close. But I feel as though that's something we're like processing as a country, the American dream. I think that we're over it, or we're realizing that that's a lie, because, well, like, first of all, there's a large segment of America that's stuck in systemic poverty, and they're like, organizationally, they will never change. Like, there's lots of people that were poor for generations, their families were, and now they're poor, and they're going to be stuck in that. It's difficult to rise above that, but the idea of the American dream kind of ignorantly ignores that. Did I just say that? Ignorantly ignores. You know, it really ignorantly ignores a lot of things in an ignorant way. The American dream kind of embodies ignorance pretty ignorantly if you think about it. It's an ignorant thing. It's an ignorance, one of the ignorant things that you'll find, just through what it ignores. What the American dream ignores kind of causes this ignorance that could be interpreted as, like, I mean, ignorantly or not, could be interpreted as ignorance. I'll just talk about that all day. I'll talk about the different variations of the word ignore all day. And I do sink a birdie. I do sink a birdie anyway. On the next hole, I sink a birdie. So maybe ultimately I'll be forgiven. Like, what if God judged you on your wins and losses at the white throne judgment? That's what it is. I mean, like, whatever, it doesn't, white throne judgment, that's obviously, if that's a in the know Christianity term. I'm just saying, at the end, when you, for whatever you believe, when whatever God is judging you, what if God judges you on if you won enough games, like your trophies? Like, oh, sorry, you don't have a third place karate trophy or anything like that, so you're going to hell. You really did not win very many medals during the course of your life or win any career modes in video games. You should have won more. It's all a competition. But with the pandemic, I mean, for reasons beyond what I care about explaining, we're just kind of processing the American dream. But classism, I feel as though the movie Titanic, it was that popular at the time. As a result of that, like, people in America especially ignore classism. And maybe not that they ignore it, but there isn't a lot of awareness of that, and there isn't a lot where people even talk about that word, classism. Like, we kind of act like it doesn't happen in America, but it does happen here just as much as anywhere else. There's just certain, it's just like characteristically, if you come from a poor background, shit like that generally will stay with you. Obviously there's exceptions, and that's what the American dream speaks to. But it's like, it puts all this pressure on everybody when you think about it. Like, in America, like, this is the land of the free, you can do anything that you want. And so then everybody in the country is faced with, like, if they're not doing something really great in line with, like, the heroes that accomplish the American dream that we see in front of us all the time on TV or whatever, I don't know. But kind of what I'm saying is just the being trapped in, you're trapped in the idea of the American dream unless you start to poke holes in it, which we're starting to do by just kind of making fun of the entire professional world. And but I feel like we're poking holes in it just by, we're making fun of dreams itself or trying to understand more about them. I would argue that understanding more of dreams, in doing that, you would come to realize that the waking life is something like a dream, but it's not, because it's so slowed down. Like, the course of your life is one giant dream where all of these different scenarios happen to you during the course of it. And it's like, if you look back at the last 15 years of your life, it is kind of haphazard because you don't know who's going to come into your life and how long they're going to stay there. As long as your life is at least sort of chaotic, where you go out to meet new people enough that you know that you're meeting new people. Like, people just kind of filter in and out like they would do in a dream. It's just like, if you look back, you can kind of understand the more borderless existence of your life, which is also true. It's just that as we live it in the waking world, it's so bordered that it doesn't look anything like a dream. But dreams are so borderless because like a person can appear and with no motivation and for no reason, and then they're gone, or they transform into a lion all of a sudden, or whatever, or the whole scene changes without warning. That it's just a borderless. But I'm saying how your life can reflect that, or your life could be that way, because there are people that live borderless lives where like their life would be so chaotic that it's like, yeah. But I'm saying, I mean, in general, I think that's a positive thing. I wish that my life was more chaotic. I live a pretty stable life as it is. But like you could get to a place, if I think it's better to allow, if you're just letting it happen, then you will have a more borderless life. If you're just allowing whatever to happen, not making it so that you have to have control over everything, then things will be more borderless for you. But it's not like necessarily anybody would want their life to be more borderless. But I'm talking about something like financial insecurity is what I would advocate for. Like, I don't look up anything that Dave Ramsey does. I'm sure that he's got a great plan, and that if you just looked up some of his, studied what he's saying for a few hours, you could improve your finances. Like, it might be a good idea, but I don't look up anything he does, probably just because financial security, well, I'm not concerned with getting financial security on somebody else's dime. Like, that's not interesting or adventurous to make a bunch of money off of somebody else's plan, Dave Ramsey. Besides that, financial security is so boring that it's, in a lot of ways, it's just not appealing. That you'll do this and then you'll be safe forever. Like, I think that it's better to be adventurous myself, personally. That's what I believe. It's better to be adventurous, to try to do something in and of yourself to create that money. That's not a better philosophy because it's more insecure, but I advocate for insecurity. You need to be insecure, but it's like we malign insecurity less today than we did 4 years ago, I would argue. Like 4 years ago, we would have looked at the term insecure and anybody who presented that characteristic as a complete loser. But it is loserly to be insecure. It's a little bit loserly to be unstable or have a gypsy life. Get on that green there. Get on that green. Because it's not mainstream, it's not standardized. It's more stable to be part of a standardized big ass religion like Christianity or Islam. Because you can stabilize your story. You can get your story straight because your story is corroborated by all these other people who say they have the same story as you. If you join like Christianity, that's a way of assimilating your narrative to the narrative of Christianity, but standardizing your narrative so that you have a set in stone, this is what happened, this is why I'm here on Earth. That's a turn off again, even though I talk directly into it. This is screwed up. This is a complicated putt here. This is a complicated putt. I'm gonna aim right there. I wonder why it's giving me, but the American Dream. Um, that goes in. Oh, it could go in. It could go in. Nope. But really short putt for birdie. I will take that. Great. Awesome. I'm amazing. 2 birdies. The American Dream. And so what was I just saying? Like Christian, if you join a big religion, one of the perks of that is joining, like, the standard becomes more clear cut for you. Then you know for sure what you're trying to accomplish. But if you're just on your own, or you practice an alternative religion, which could include a number of things, like being a medium or a fortune teller, I would say is an alternative religion. If you practice religions that are closer to Satanism than like the Christian God, if you practice a disintegrated religion, as opposed to an integrated one, then you're living a more destabilized life. And you're in with like the sinners and the commoners, and generally people who are systemically poor. Not that being a Christian makes you rich automatically. It's just that the line, you can make that line kind of obvious. If you join the Christian church, you make yourself safe because you're joining this giant community, really like a giant gang, that it offers you protections. It offers you protections ultimately, but wow, another good drive. But let me discuss the morality that's presented in The Office, the TV show, The Office. It's a little bit like that. It speaks to classism with the difference between the white collar workers and the blue collar workers, the office workers and the warehouse. But just the difference between Jim and Pam and then everybody else. Like, and I'm talking about this along the lines of who is a sinner, who is more destabilized, who's more stabilized. Like, Jim and Pam represent stabilized America, I would argue. Christian America. You do eventually figure out that they are Christians, which just makes sense, because the way that they talk to each other, the way that they talk about people in the show the entire time, like from season 1, the way that Jim and Pam talk, I would argue is kind of inherently Christian, because they write off the people who have obvious sins as just they're a sinner and they're not to be listened to. Like when Todd Packer has a DUI, Pam's like makes fun of him for not being able to drive himself around, but that's just like immediately acceptable. The way that it's presented in the show, it's just like, yeah, of course we write off the sinners and the losers. So, but it's like Todd Packer is the ideal loser, like an idealized version of a loser. Like, you're not gonna find a lot of people in real life that like strippers so much more than any semblance of a meaningful relationship, that they are like advocating for leaving their girlfriend for a stripper or the local talent, which is what Todd Packer says to Michael Scott in like season 7 when he's telling Michael that he should leave Holly or whatever. Like, that person doesn't, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist in real life. Like Todd Packer, that he's that shitty of a guy. Like, you're gonna run into people that are your friends that are going to tell you leave your girlfriend for a stripper. Like, there are really not that many guys who value a relationship with a stripper more than relationship with their girlfriend. So he's kind of an idealized picture of a loser, but Michael Scott in the beginning of the show is a sinner in comparison to Jim and Pam. Jim and Pam are just the not sinners, like they're Christian America, and the way that they talk to each other, I think, has influenced morality for the entire country. Just the way that Jim and Pam are scripted actually influences a lot of modern day Christianity, I think, because Christians are big fans of The Office, and Christians are the people who watched it first before the rest of the country, really. Like, Christians took to The Office before the rest of the country did, as far as I know about it. But it's, the morality in The Office is difficult to pin down. That's partially why the show is so successful. TV shows where the morality in the show is more easily definable, those are shows that don't do as well. But I would say that it's something more like you can determine how successful a show is going to be directly by how definable its morality is. Like Parks and Recreation is a successful show. We like that show. A big part of the reason is because its morality is undefinable. So like Parks and Recreation lasts for a while. I mean, it does better than other shows as far as us remembering it. Because its morality is undefinable, like Ron Swanson there isn't like who's Democrat or who's Republican. For example, and like Ron Swanson is, I guess, a Republican, but they don't make it so that all the Republican stereotypes apply to him. Like they write complex characters that don't have an obvious morality, which is the way that it works in real life, is that people in real life are complex and they aren't stereotypes. Like people have complicated moralities, and most people individually would argue vehemently against being either right or left a lot of the time. It's like a lot of the time, if people are talking about it, they're like, I'm not right or left. That's everybody in the country. Nobody in the country is right or left, even though half the people are right, half the people are left. Everybody, and I would take them at their word to some extent, is like people actually have a complicated morality, and it's the broad brush of right or left is a little bit ridiculous. Ooh, that one's really breaking. Stop. But if we're being honest, the Office treats the blue collar versus the white collar in a really stereotypical way, where they're like, look at all these blue collar workers that are all sinners, essentially. But blue collar are the people who don't live as stable a life, or they're like more poor. But the Office treats them all that way, like Roy is just this monster and Jim is Jesus, is kind of the way that they portray it. Because they give, as long as they're just trying to set up the Jim-Pam relationship, they give all of the bad qualities relationship-wise to Roy and all the good qualities to Jim. Like Jim likes to talk and to Pam in the right way and in a funny way. Like there is a morality that they're assuming quite a bit of the time, just with the way that Jim and Pam talk to each other. Like The Office definitely deals with, they think that there is the one out there, like everybody's looking for the right one. The Office morality acts like, I'm gonna have to use my other audio because this is one of those days where the headset just keeps turning off by itself. I don't know why it does that. while I'm talking into it, or maybe I just gotta like adjust the volume up and down. But the office morality says that there's something like true romance or perfect love where you're looking for the right one. And so Pam was with Roy, but she was wrong while that was happening because we as the audience can tell that he's not the one because there is something like the one or something. And obviously a lot of TV shows are like that, but I just bring it up because all of those TV shows are wrong because there isn't the one in a more bordered existence, in a more Christian existence. You can live in the reality where there is like the one. I mean, a country that subscribes to marriage as much as America does, which they do, like pretty pro-marriage. It's just the idea of marriage is kind of the idea of there is the one because you're saying there is the one. That's why you end up with them for like 50 years in a row or whatever. So like it's really pro-marriage, just the idea that there is a one. It's pro-marriage, it's pro-Christian, but like the warehouse workers they have the bad qualities because they're like Roy. Or of course they're tougher, and of course they're scarier. The people from the warehouse. Not that is a bad thing. It's just the morality of The Office. Like, Michael is a sinner in comparison to Jim and Pam, especially in the beginning, because of all of his antics. And Michael is just a guy on his own shit. So he's really individualistic, especially because he's concerned with being an entertainer. And the person who wants to be the entertainer the way that Michael is, he just has those qualities. That's somebody who's individualistic. And it's interesting, especially in the first couple seasons, which I would say that's where you find out the most about the show. It's like the basis for the morality of the show is especially going to unfold in the early seasons. And really they can see kind of that morality play out through the rest of the show. But just like the way that Michael is an entertainer and all of the shit that he tries, the rest of the office is just like ignoring it. Kind of just the way it works in reality, especially the way that America is going now, where we're trying to say that, I mean, we're just canceling anybody who's a sinner. That's what's happening in America now. And it's sort of always been that way, but it feels like Christianity is making a comeback. Not that it ever went away. It's just that during the Trump years, those were more like the Rogan years too, where things kind of opened up where people were okay with just throwing whatever wild theories into the air. And we were okay with listening to people talk, but I feel like there's a lot of backlash against the Rogans of the world. And the Trump era, there's a lot of backlash reaction to that, where we're like, okay, we need to rein in the sinners and the individualistic people. Like the way that Deshaun Watson gets a 14-game suspension from the NFL just because the NFL needs good PR for Christian America, essentially, who are calling for Deshaun Watson's head because he, according to a court of law, I mean, just because it was brought up in court, like it wasn't really proven. Like, I guess I don't know enough about the case, so I'm not going to say it was or wasn't sexual assault. It's just that it wasn't like he went to prison or they proved it in a court of law, but were like, he's being linked to sexual assault, and so we need to relegate him to some lower level of society. I mean, cancel him because he's linked to sexual assault, and that's a sin. We're making him a sinner. Like, we're canceling people and making sinners out of them publicly. A lot more so. But it's like Michael... I keep losing the point momentarily. I'm trying to say, like, the way that they... So I think I made the cut in the first round. I continue this event. Yeah, but like during the Trump years, it was just like a heyday for conspiracy theorists, is what I'm saying. But I feel like in the last few years we've been trying to make everything more rational and practical, where we're not going to allow the people who just have these wild ideas like the Michael Scotts of the world to talk, but that's just the way that the rest of the office treats Michael Scott. Like, Michael Scott is the individual, but then the rest of the office represents the collective that reins in all of his activities. But this is just the way that it works in life. If you're an individual, as somebody who's concerned with individualism like me, I want to bring wacky words into the conversation or shit that isn't true. But a lot of the time it's just met with silence, the same way that you see in The Office. Like, that's how it works in real life, and The Office is one of the first shows to actually portray it accurately like that, is that the person with wild ideas is actually just met with silence by the rest of the people, silently thinking that they're just an idiot. Because the individualistic person is the idiot. I mean, they put themselves on the pedestal, being somebody more concerned with entertainment, but it's just like Jim and Pam are always good and they're always cool and they're always popular. Michael Scott isn't, because he's an individual who's trying too many things and he's trying to please too many people. He does things in an unconventional way. And so he's kind of relegated to idiot status by the rest of the office for most of the time. And so they're like, the office has good writers, so they write Michael Scott to improve over time. And then by the end of the show, he's saying no to the Todd Packers of the world, who never made it out of the sinful life into the Christian life. I know that I'm making some leaps in describing it this way because The Office doesn't make any statements about being Christian. But I'm just saying how The Office does have a morality. It has to. That's the only way that it lasts that long. But, like, eventually, over the years, Michael Scott becomes a better person because he learns these things. And he just adopts a more standardized way of living where he gets married the way that other people do. But it's kind of like Parks and Recreation is a show that is successful. Let me see how many holes I went through. I think I got through 5 holes or 6 holes. But it's not as successful as The Office, and I would argue it's because you can point out its morality faster. It's not easy to point out the morality in Parks and Recreation because it's a it's a successful show or whatever. But for example, like, Parks and Recreation reveals its morality eventually, like in the episode that it's Leslie's campaign, and then they're trying to track down a bunch of vans. Like, they're trying to get a fleet of vans for Leslie to use for her campaign for some reason. And the guy who owns the vans won't give them the vans because he's, like, morally corrupt. Or you can just tell this about this character is a shitty guy who's just trying to make a buck in any way he can, and he doesn't have integrity, the guy who owns the vans. And so then they get screwed out of some money when they try to take the vans or whatever. remember. I don't remember exactly what happened, but then the guy. Okay, forget it. I'm not going to try with this headset anymore. As long as this stream is still going. But the guy runs into the back of Donna's car, and then Donna is like, slams her Mercedes into the front of his car to make it look like it was this big wreck. And then Donna and I think Tom and Ron are all there, and they're going to corroborate Donna's story that the guy who owns the vans crashed into the back of Donna's car, even though that's not what happened. Like, the three characters in Parks and Recreation, they're all going to team up to corroborate this lie, sort of to blackmail this guy who owns the vans because he screwed them over. But it's kind of this, it's a vengeful mindset, first of all. But it's just like, you can't take morality into your own hands when you're writers of a TV show. I feel like that's what sinks your show faster than anything else. Because I don't really know why. I think it makes the characters look more flimsy. I don't really know the particulars of why that is true, but it's just that Donna and the other characters of Parks and Recreation, you start to see that they have their own morality, or the show has its own morality. Like the TV show is okay with this vengeful way of living where this guy screwed them over, and now they're going to do anything it takes, including slam their own car into his car to make up a story that he slammed into them. Like, that, you'd be going to great lengths if you actually did that in real life. Like, if you were subscribing to a morality that allowed you to do that, that would be kind of ridiculous. And so the unrealisticness of it makes it so that you can poke holes in the show, because the show is ultimately trying to be real in every instance. And if it is real in every instance, then it's the most successful show. And it's like The Office does that better than any other show, and that's why it's so successful. It has to do with that their morality is so bland, but it's like the morality of The Office is as bland as the morality that plays out in a real office. Like, the morality of the show The Office is, I would say it's consistent with the morality that happens in a workplace, in a regular workplace, because a workplace also has a morality, even though they say that they're not religious or anything. A workplace has its own morality, and it would be difficult to point that out, but The Office kind of embodies and brings to the forefront a lot of things that are unspoken to be moral across the entire country. Like, The Office represents what is moral for the whole country, like unspoken things. Like, of course, we all hate the guy that has a DUI. Trying to think if there's another example of them just being like, oh, this person's a sinner. We all hate Roy because he's inconsiderate, basically. Like, that's the Christian idea, but I would say that that's an underlying sentiment that the entire country has before The Office makes it on to TV, and while The Office is on TV. The Office is kind of embodying all of these underlying moralities that, like, Christianity influences, that we wouldn't say it's like Christian, but that it's just moral, like human sense to do these things. But I guess my argument is that they're ultimately Christian because it's done in the name of putting the sinners in their place and relegating the poor to continue to be poor. Or, like, we need to emphasize the separation between the good people who are stable and then the bad people who are okay with a chaotic life and might be getting themselves into whatever sin. But I'm just saying, overall, I think the morality of Parks and Recreation is more easily definable like that. Like, you can see where the writers, it's like the writers have their own morality in some cases. Like, why are the writers saying that it's okay to do things in this vengeful way? And you might not think that that's a big deal. It's just that it's weird that a show that's a comedy would ever be serious, or in some area, that like Parks and Recreation takes it seriously, like that you're allowed to take revenge and take it into your own hands. Like, you can totally lie about another person if the opportunity presents itself. If you know the other person is shitty, then that gives you the right to do whatever you want. Like, The Office never presented anything like that, especially not from Jim and Pam. Jim and Pam always do the right thing. They would never do anything like that, and that's part of why The Office is so successful. Is because they just embody the blandest morality possible. They don't take any risks from a moral standpoint. And the only way, and when you're presenting it to an American audience, basically that means
that for sure.
Appealing to Christians without saying that you're appealing to Christians.
And this putt is for birdie 3 on the scorecard.
And I love The Office. I've seen it as much as anybody has. It's just that it's kind of funny, the early Michael, how much we say that that guy is an asshole and a bozo, or you would have to, because he's just an inconsiderate person. But he's really just trying to live his life and be himself, or he's just an entertainer. But it's just kind of assumed like that he's such a dunce in comparison to Jim and Pam, who are like always amazing, especially early on. And I know that they go to great lengths in that show in later seasons to write Jim and Pam to have flaws or whatever, or like to not look like the winners in every situation. But they're always the winners generally.
That wasn't your best effort, was it? Pretty straightforward 4-footer coming up here.
Let me not talk about something so...
Oh, wonderful effort. Confirms the par.
Seriously, that was a close one. That was a tough putt.
Currently 1 under for the event.
The American dream. But the thing about The Office morality that I really want to bring up is the reliance on the office environment. That the office environment is always sturdy, is always stable, and it's just that every character in the office who tries to do their own dream, or have their own dream, or anybody in the office who's pursuing something like the American dream, like putting themselves out there, pursuing the kind of crazy idea that they have in their head, like Pam with graphic design. It almost happens to every single character, save like Meredith and Creed. Every one of them a lot of them have a sub-storyline where they're pursuing a dream, and everybody in the office is proven to be a failure for pursuing that dream. But it's kind of like it's the same as going into a world where you are something like a blue-collar worker. Like, you have to border on a chaotic world and an individualistic one rather than a collectivized one if you're really going to pursue your dreams. And it involves being as crazy as someone like Michael Scott. But over time, over the seasons in the show, Michael Scott gets absorbed into the rest of the group, and he just becomes one with the rest of them. And like, Michael Scott is actually kind of right the whole time, and the show itself is unrealistic because you would have a lot more turnover in personnel during the course of 9 years. Like, this show, the reason why there's a lot of reasons it's successful, but a big reason why it's so successful is because it's the same people for 9 years in a row, and people want something like that in their real lives. And if they admitted it, they wish that their workplace was like that, where their workplace was, the people that they worked with were a family, or it operated that way. And so Michael Scott is always saying that they're a family, but the rest of the office is like, Michael, you're an idiot, because that's not the way it works. This is a business environment. There's a separation between you as the boss and then the rest of us. Like, this is professional and we don't have to get along or whatever. But Michael Scott is always trying to entertain the group or bring everybody together as a family through his talents. And it's really like they are a family if objectively, or like looking at the show as a viewer of the show, somebody watching the show, you have to admit that what you're seeing in front of you with the characters in the office is more like a family than it is an office place, because there's no office that actually works like that. The only place in real life you see something that works like that is if it's a family, because a family is the only time that the people around you stay the same no matter what happens, the way that the characters in the office never leave. And they bring in a couple new people, yeah, whatever, but it's not nearly what happens in a regular environment. It would never happen in an office that 9 years in a row, like all the same. They stayed staffed the same way, all the same people stayed there and in their same desks. Like, that amount of stability is unrealistic. That amount of safety is unrealistic. You would only find that on a TV show. That's why people like it so much, is you have to turn to this idealized picture in order to get more safety. Like, people like to feel safe and comfortable when watching TV shows, and like The Office really takes care of you. It's a show like that because it presents this, what is essentially a family, a dysfunctional one, that at the end of the day they all stay together, and the characters themselves like kind of become happier over the years too. And maybe it would work that way. Maybe a workspace, the people in it would be happier if everybody stayed the same, or there was more stability. But it's like, that's when a TV show becomes successful, is when what you're seeing in front of you is like, I wish that it was like that in my life, because you don't find that kind of stability in real life, especially not at your office. But I'm saying how the show Workaholics, I think that show is successful because the audience that watches it, they want that to be their lives. Like, it seems like a simple enough thing. Living with two of your friends. Workaholics is a show with Adam Devine, in case you don't know, but you probably should know about it by now. Workaholics is a show with Adam Devine, where Adam Devine and two other people, not that he's so famous or whatever, but him and two of his friends live in this house. It's a show about three friends that just live in a house and get high and drunk all the time, even though they're in their 20s, like they're past college. They get high and drunk all the time. They all work at the same place. That show is successful because people watch that show and they wish they were in that position. I wish I had that. As simple as that sounds. Like, two friends that you live in a house with and then you just get drunk and high all the time. That would be fun. And it's difficult to find anything like that post-college. Like, that kind of stability doesn't exist. Because if you did live in a house with two of your friends, pretty quickly one of them would move out or get a girlfriend or get married, that you would get a new roommate. Like, you wouldn't have that kind of stability in real life, where year after year you're living with two of your friends and you're all like friends and you're all okay with each other. Like, and usually people aren't as, it's also an idealized picture of friendship. Like, you don't have as good of friends as the friends that these three people are in this show, just in terms of respect, because they all respect each other 100% for some reason. That's the way it works in TV shows. A lot of the time, is every character is respected for the character they are. You wouldn't write a character that is disrespected. The Office does that with Toby, and it's unique in that regard as well. But eventually the rest of the office starts to decide that Toby sucks as well. But, I mean, they do a good job of writing the storyline of somebody being hated because...
That's a good-looking shot there.
They just make it funny.
Time for the second shot here on the second
Michael
hole.
particularly hates Toby. Let's see here, 123. But, like, it's a desirable thing that you see in front of you, like workaholics. Like, I wish my life was a little like that, or like I had obviously stable friends that at any moment I could go out and do something with them or whatever. And obviously, it does work that way. It's just that, like, it's not like that for years and years, and the picture of it that's presented in Workaholics is kind of just ideal. That's TV shows get to take that liberty, present an idealized picture, but it's just that. Oh wow, an hour 6. I had no idea. Time flies when you're not doing the 9 holes. Wonder how many holes I've done.
Ooh, this would be handy for
I've really been
right.
slacking. I might have to accomplish the 9 goal, but I will try to do more holes per thing so that
Not a bad
the
approach,
video
that
game
one.
portion of this is more valid,
range, but you never know.
rather than
one.
I'm
Still
taking
counts.
a bunch of gaps between shots like I did
coming
today
up
in the
is
last
for
couple
birdie.
episodes. But it's just that the morality of The Office, I'm gonna hit this one, says that you shouldn't pursue your dreams because everybody who does becomes a failure. They all realize that, it was better to be like Christian at the end of the day. It was better to live a standardized life, or like The Office is always bringing you money. You should have made that choice. You should have made the safe choice and the stable choice. That's something that's reinforced in The Office over and over and over again for the entire 9 seasons. That's big part of the show's morality, is the evils that will befall you if you try to make decisions on your own. Pam thought she was a good graphic designer. Turns out that she's actually a failure. And The Office is allowed to do that because it's actually one of the first shows that honestly explored this topic, because typically that is the result for everybody. It's that you try to pursue your dreams, you figure out it's a lot harder than you thought.
Currently 1 under for the
And
tournament.
I might have lost you by arguing
up the
like the
leaderboard,
Christian
never a bad
life
thing.
is the standardized one, or like that's the stable one, because Christians often would say that their life
Let's
is
see
so
what happens here
difficult that
at
it's
the
like
third hole.
that's a more difficult road to go down or whatever. But it's the same with Kevin. Kevin has a Scrantonicity, and he's pursuing his dreams there. That he fails at that. Michael makes his movie, and like Michael has his side shit that he's writing his movie and screenplay, and it's eventually proven that, like, oh yeah, Michael, you're a shitty artist, just like we all knew. You should have understood that already, just by virtue of most of the time it doesn't work out if you try to be an individual or be an artist. Like, Michael is a shitty movie writer, it's proven. It's the same with Andy. Andy thinks he can be a singer, and then it's proven that he doesn't have what it takes. This is the morality of the show, which is just a morality that asks you to appeal to the norm or safety, which is just kind of a Christian morality. Christian morality asks you to appeal to the Savior, or a life of safety at behest of a life of trying all this individual shit that you don't know if it'll work out or not. Like the life where you abnegate, the life where you ignore what you could do out in the world. That's the Christian morality. Christian morality tells you to play it safe and don't try any shit out in the world, because nothing will work out for you for your lifetime out in the world. Because it doesn't amount to anything anyway. But I'd say that this is also the morality of The Office, is like, don't leave the office, don't go out into the world. like Michael Scott got lucky when he started the Michael Scott Paper Company that he got resorbed back into the office, but like ultimately the office and the continuing office environment that produces money, produces a salary for everybody, is what holds the office together. Like that's what you hearken back to for everybody in the office. They all end up back there no matter what, because that is like safety, or it's sort of a paradise that allows all of the characters in the office to live out their lives safely and peacefully ultimately. But I'm just talking about the American dream. The office, the morality of it crumbles the idea of the American dream by expressing honestly what happens to regular people when they try to pursue something spectacular. A lot of the times they would find out that it was unattainable, but I mean, the office is saying like, when the characters step their toe into the unstabilized world, step their toe into possible poverty, that's never going to be a good decision for you. But unfortunately, you do have to try to make it on your own, and you would have to take risks like that, you'd have to live a sinful life, but you'd have to live a sinful life in order to try to make it on your own. Like, you don't get to live a Christian life and then be a major pop star or anything like that.
Just striped.
Save Justin Bieber, but he's not a pop star. He makes shitty music now that he is a Christian, as is always the case. Anybody who's actually a Christian makes shitty music. This is one of the only facts that's left in the world. But thanks for listening. I made it through maybe 7 or 8 holes, but I'll have another episode possibly this week sometime, but if not then, next week Saturday, you can tune into my Twitch stream. I'll try to do it at 11 a.m. next Saturday. I'll set it up. I'll make the appointment if you want to watch the stream so that it doesn't come out of the blue. But thanks for listening. Bye.